Hey everyone, and welcome to my first book haul of the year. I have not done my post-Christmas book haul yet, but I've also bought a couple of things in January. So what I thought I'd do is just do one great big book haul in one big go. So let's start going through this stack, starting with the books that I was gifted. The first three I got were all from my mum, and the first one is Hooked by A.C. Wise, which is the sequel to Wendy Darling. And Wendy Darling is following Wendy from the Peter Pan tale, but she's all grown up now, she's had a family of her own, and one day she discovers Peter Pan trying to take her daughter to Neverland, and she's like, I've got to save my daughter. Peter is not a good person. He is creepy, he is very, very evil, all of this kind of thing, and she's got to try and save her. And then in this one, Hooked, she's teaming up with Captain Hook to try and stop Peter Pan for once and for all, and I cannot wait to read this one. I loved Wendy Darling when I read it a couple of years ago. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I loved how it took the tale of Peter Pan and made it so deliciously creepy. I loved her interpretation of Peter Pan itself, and I'm just so excited to see what she's going to do with Captain Hook, because if there is one character I love to see retold in these types of things, it is Captain Hook. I love Captain Hook, mostly thanks to Once Upon a Time, I won't lie, but I'm so excited to see what she's going to do with Hook, and now I cannot wait to see him team up with Wendy, because that just sounds absolutely genius, and I just am so excited to see how this is going to turn out. Then I have Mindbreaker by Kate Dillon, which is the sequel to Mindwalker, which was like a futuristic sci-fi where tech is everywhere, we've got it inside of our bodies, all of this kind of thing, and we're following our main character who gets betrayed by the company she's working for, and the tech in her head is also failing, and she is destined to die in the next couple of months, and this is the sequel to that book. I loved the first one so much when I read it. It read like a Marvel movie. The AI itself was called Jarvis, which absolutely just brought me so much joy, I won't lie, and I have been desperate for the sequel ever since. I now finally have it, and I cannot wait to finish out this duology. I am so ridiculously excited. And then the final thing she got me is Something is Killing the Children Volume 7, which was once again absolutely brilliant. If you do not know what Something is Killing the Children is all about, it is essentially following Erica Slaughter, who is a monster hunter for the House of Slaughter, and what happens when she tries to break free of their clutches. And it is such a good horror graphic novel. I mean, I am biased because I love James Tynion. I think he is the king of the horror graphic novel, but this one was no exception. I love the twists and turns of this one. It was absolutely brilliant. I love the battles in it and everything else. It was so much fun, and I gave it 4 stars, and it was basically the best thing I could have started 2025 with, and I am so glad I chose it because it was so good. And then I was very kindly gifted Omega Morales and the Legend of La Lechuza by Laken Z. Kemp. I apologise right now if I've mispronounced that. By Abbey of Pelennor. And this one, I'm just going to read you the back of it. It says, Omega Morales comes from a family of empaths, diviners who can read and manipulate the emotions of people and objects around them. But Omega's powers don't quite work, and it leaves her feeling like an outsider in her own family. When a witch with the power to transform herself into an owl, known in Mexican folklore as La Lechuza, shows up unannounced, Omega, her best friend Claw, who happens to be a ghost, and her cousin Carlitos must conduct a seance under a full moon in order to unravel the mystery of the legend. Suddenly, Omega's powers begin to change, and the key to understanding her powers is more complicated than she thought. She will have to decide what's more important, trusting the instincts of others or learning to trust in herself. Which just sounds like really good fun. Apparently it's meant to be a little bit spooky, so very excited to read this one, and thank you so much, Abby, once again for gifting this to me. Then Olivia Savannah of Olivia's Catastrophe very kindly gifted me Beasts and Beauty by Somain Chain Annie. I apologise again if I mispronounced that, and this is a series of retellings that are done in a little bit more of a spooky manner. So it's classic fairy tales like Beauty and the Beast. You've also got Rapunzel in here. What else do you have? You also got Sleeping Beauty, Jack and the Beanstalk, Hansel and Gretel, Snow White, Bluebeard, all of this kind of thing, but they're told in a little bit more of a spooky manner. There is also illustrations throughout here as well, which are absolutely gorgeous, and I cannot wait to read this. So thank you very much, Olivia Savannah, for gifting me this book because it just looks like so much fun. I cannot wait to read it. And then speaking of Olivia, she also unhauled 2 books to me. The first one is Red Seas Under Red Skies, and the second one is The Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch. And both of these are part of the Gentleman Bastard series, the first one being The Lies of Locke Lamora, which I absolutely adored last year. I've been desperate to get my hands on the next 2, and when Olivia was unhauling these, she asked if I wanted them, so I snapped them up. So thank you so much, Olivia, for unhauling these books to me as well, because I cannot wait to continue on with this series. The next 4 things all came from my Waypoint Books full moon subscription box, and the first one is The Deviant by James Tynion, and this is a James Tynion horror Christmas story which is following a young reporter who is trying to interview a serial killer who in 1973 killed a bunch of people at Christmas while dressed as Santa, and what happens when the killings start back up again. And this was fantastic. Even though this was just the setup volume to get into the main story in the next one, it was still done absolutely fantastically well. I love getting to know the characters. I love trying to explore what went on in 1973 and what's going on now. I loved all of that. I love the cliffhanger at the end as well, which means I'm going to need the next volume immediately. I will read it in the height of summer if I have to, because I'm so desperate to find out what happens next. I also love that this explored feelings around being gay and coming out and what that means, all of this kind of thing. It was own voices for the gay representation as well, I should say, and this was absolutely fantastic. Once again, James Tynion can do no wrong in my eyes. He is a fantastic horror graphic novelist, and also a massive shout out to Hannah for finding a graphic novel I had never heard of before by my favourite horror graphic novelist. Like, I don't know how she did it, but she managed it, and I am so glad I read this because this was the perfect Christmas Eve reading. I loved it. She also sent me The Infernals by Ryan Parrott, and this one is following the children of the Antichrist and what happens when the Antichrist is dying, and he's got to try and decide who's now going to take over his business and basically kind of become the next Antichrist. It was a little bit like Succession in a lot of ways, from what I've heard. I've not actually seen Succession, but it's this kind of thing. You've also got wars between heaven and hell and demons and angels and all of this kind of thing, and it was fantastic. I love the world of this one. I love anything to do with like war between heaven and hell and Antichrist and all of this kind of thing. I love all of that kind of stuff, and this was no exception. It was fantastic. I loved it. And then the 2 books she got me were The Storm Runner by J.C. Cervantes. This is part of the Rick Riordan Presents imprint, and this one is following Zane, who has a volcano in his back garden, and it turns out it is actually the prison for the Mayan god of death, and it all goes from there. I have not read this one yet, but I'm very, very excited to. I love death gods and all of this kind of thing. I've really enjoyed Rick Riordan Presents before, so very, very excited to read this one. And then the last thing she got me was The Last Hope in Hopetown by Maria Tarord. Again, I apologise if I've mispronounced that, and this is a middle grade all about vampires, and something is going wrong with the vampires in the town. That's all I really know. That's all I really want to know. I just know that this year for me feels like the year of the vampire, and I am so excited to get stuck into this one. I do not read enough vampire books, let alone middle grade vampire books, so very excited to, if you let me have the pun, sink my teeth into this one. And then everything else is ebook. So the first one is Six of Sorrow by Amanda Lindsmayer, and this is about 6 girls who were all born on the same day. They grew up being very, very close, but then they slowly all broke apart. Then one day one of them goes missing and returns 3 days later with no memory of what happened to her. Then another one goes missing and the same kind of thing happens. So they all have to band back together again because they're starting to think that the fact that they were all born on the same day and the fact that they're now slowly going missing definitely means something, and something more sinister is coming. It's been described as being like Yellow Jackets as well, which definitely intrigues me because while I haven't seen Yellow Jackets yet, it is very high on my list of priority watches this year, and this just sounds like a really good, really fun time, so definitely cannot wait to read this one, possibly when Yellow Jackets comes out and I start actually watching it, or maybe around the spooky season. Next is These Deadly Prophecies. This is by Andrea Tang, and this is about a teenage sorcerer's apprentice who tries to solve her boss's murder when she is framed for it. That's all I really know, further than the fact that this has been described as being like Knives Out, which is definitely one of my favourite movie series, so when this one went on sale I also picked this one up. I also got Night Strider by Sophia Slade, and this one is all about Ren, who is a deadly manifestation of nightmares, and she must must team up with another nightmare creature to take down the only night creature who can cross between dream and waking realms. And again, I love this idea. I love the idea of nightmare creatures, dream realms, all of this kind of thing. I'm all over that type of stuff. I've heard some people absolutely raving about this book, so again, it went on sale. I picked it up. I also got The 13th Trial by Erin A. Craig, and this one is about the goddaughter of Death himself having to navigate a ruthless court to save the life of the king, while also dealing with a pantheon of gods as she fights for agency in her own life. And I mean, this had me at goddaughter of Death, because if there's characters I absolutely love, it is Susan Stowe Hellid and Death from the Discworld. So anything else like that, I am all over it, because I love that kind of relationship. I love the idea of Death having a family and exploring that, all of this kind of thing. So definitely cannot wait to read this one. It was one of my most anticipated of last year, so now that I own it, I cannot wait to read it. Another one I could not resist is Long Live Evil by Sarah Rees Brennan, which is about an ill woman who finds her way into her favourite book series and decides that she's going to try and help the villain survive. And that's all I needed to know, because I love villains. I've said this a lot of times before, but I absolutely adore villains so much. So when this one went on sale, I was immediately like, I'm having that one. It's about villains, and I cannot wait to read this one. I have seen so many people really hyping this one up, and now I cannot wait to read it for myself. And then the final one I have is another James Tynion, because apparently I didn't haul in enough James Tynion this month, and this one is The Department of Truth. It's all about a guy who discovers that every conspiracy theory is actually real, and not only that, there is actually a governmental department dedicated to covering up these conspiracies and making them look like conspiracies. And that just sounds like a really good time. I don't know if this is a horror or more of like a thriller type thing. I don't know. I just know that I really trust James Tynion's writing, and I cannot wait to read this one. And that is my entire Christmas and January book haul. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up. Comment down below, tell me a book you got for Christmas. I'd love to know. Or if you don't have that much time, leave me a vampire emoji down below to let me know that you were here. I'll also leave a link as well down below to all my social media if you want to check it out, including to the Comic Book Sanctum, which is my website dedicated to Marvel Comics, which strangely doesn't have any James Tynion on there, funnily enough. I'll have to fix that later. But anyway, all of that is linked down below if you want to check it out. Or if you just want to see any more of my videos, please click subscribe here, and over here will be the link to my previous video. But until next time, everyone, bye!